the thoughts of someone whose opinion is far more worthwhile than most of our opinions on the issue of the grooming, let's call them what they are, rape gangs, because she was the whistleblower in the Rochdale gang case. Maggie Oliver, former detective constable with Greater Manchester Police. A very, very good morning to you, Maggie.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I know you've been speaking to Talk and other media over the last week after this whole thing blew up, pretty much out of the blue. Just first question, really, what did you make of this suddenly coming back into the news, basically because of an Elon Musk tweet?
You know what, Julia? I am grateful for anything that brings this back onto a national public platform, because it is such a monumental failure of decades in this country. So anything that draws us back into these issues, for me, is worthwhile. I think what we have to be careful of, though, Julia, is that we don't deflect from the central issues of this, which is children being raped and being failed by the authorities. And what normally happens is we get a 5-minute soundbite and then it fades away and nothing happens. Personalities come and go, but the issues remain. And I feel like, I feel it's Groundhog Day for me. I keep going round and round the same hamster wheel, and I even get sick and tired of the sound of my own voice, because I've been saying these things for so long, but they're still there, they're still a problem, and children's lives are being ruined.
And this is the thing, this isn't something that happened in the past that needs to be rectified now. This is happening right now to thousands upon thousands of girls right now, today, in 50-plus towns and cities. The men who are carrying this out are not being arrested, they're not being prosecuted, they're not going to jail. If they are of dual nationality or foreign nationality, they're not being deported. They are still there doing what they do. Now, when you broke this, I mean, how many years ago was it now when you actually resigned from the police in Greater Manchester to basically whistleblow on the Rochdale rape gangs?
Yeah, I resigned in October 2012, but in the 18 months before that, I'd worked on the Rochdale case, and what I saw and had seen on another case in 2005 was gross criminal neglect. And I tried for 18 months. I went to the Chief Constable, Peter Foy, I went to the Home Office, I went to the Children's Commissioner, I went to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Nobody wanted to listen. And I faced a choice, either carry on with my job, which I loved, and, turn away from this, or resign and speak publicly. Now, I chose to resign because I believe that this is scandalous and it destroys children's lives. And if I say anything, I'm as bad as those who turned away repeatedly over decades. And I've not changed my opinion. I'm sad that I had to do that, to speak the truth.
Well, I mean, it's not sad. I mean, it's outrageous that you had to do that. There's some of the details, it seems to me a lot of people haven't been aware of some of the more gruesome details all over Twitter. But I mean, girls being, plied with drink and drug, met from their care homes or outside the school gates by men who, 2 or 3 times their age, often plying them with gifts, the free takeaway, the taxi home, and then drugging them, pretending they were their boyfriends. Of course, these girls, some of them, hadn't really been shown much attention and love before. Others actually from perfectly happy homes. Quite extraordinary that they were targeted, and when the dads tried to get involved, they were the ones who ended up being arrested. But girls basically taken to these rape houses, being raped, on an industrial scale by men old enough to be their fathers and grandfathers. Men who were living perfectly respectable lives in the outer community, being branded, being tortured, being burned, being spat on. Girls turning up at A&E, pregnant, with horrible, needing surgery for their wounds from some of these attacks. Nothing being done. A social worker organising for one girl to be fostered by the parents of the man who was raping her and allowing her sort of an Islamic marriage, Sharia marriage with him. I mean, some of the stories are just so beyond reason. You think, well, there must be a Hollywood movie. This can't be real. But this was happening. Now, here's the thing. It was happening. Do you believe that this was happening to white working class girls because the perpetrators were men of Pakistani heritage? Often it was talked about they were Asian men. They weren't Asian men. They were men quite specifically from Pakistani heritage, many of them even born in this country. They were Muslim, Pakistani men. Was that aspect of them being Pakistani, being Muslim, or being immigrant, or from immigrant families, was that a major factor in this, or could this just as easily have been any other ethnic group?
You know what, Julie, I'm asked this question all the time, and I believe that was one of the major factors that this has been allowed to evolve, develop, and has not been addressed. I think the other half of that is that it was very much a class issue as well.
Yeah.
That an attitude amongst the elite, amongst the politicians, that children from these very often unhappy backgrounds, they are vulnerable because they are craving attention, craving love. They are sitting ducks. The attention should be on the predators, not judging the children and deciding, they've made a lifestyle choice. We knew what was going on. I knew 20 years ago. And when I hear senior politicians and people working in these places saying, the children are complicit in their abuse, it absolutely enrages me. Focus on the abusers. Question, why are they doing it? They're doing it because they get away with it. Nobody has addressed it. Nobody wants to get
But was it because they thought working class white girls, they could get away with it? They thought they were sluts and slags. They didn't rape them. There was some evidence that was given in court by some of those defendants who ended up getting guilty verdicts, basically saying, look, these white girls, they're there for the taking, basically. They walk around, they don't show modesty, they're sexually active, they're for us to use as we see fit. Do you think that was part of the attitude?
Yeah, I really do, Julia. And I've often said, if this was the Chief Constable's daughter, or it was Keir Starmer's daughter, would they say they were making a lifestyle choice? No, they wouldn't. These kids were cast on the scrap heap and nobody was fighting their corner. I have a duty. I'm not speaking on behalf of the victims. They have their own voices. But my job, I have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of victims of these gangs. I'm not saying that these are the only child abusers that we have.
Of course not.
But I would be saying, if it was in, I would speak quite openly and say the same things about the Archbishop of Canterbury, covering up.
Well, indeed. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of the focus then became, we can't talk about this because this becomes, this is a talking point for, the Tommy Robinsons, for the far right, because you're just stirring up racial hatred, community tensions. And that was the excuse given by lots of counsellors, by the police, by the social workers, by everybody involved. Oh, don't get involved, it's all too difficult. But the reality is it was because of their ethnicity and their religion that they weren't prosecuted. If they had been white, they would have been prosecuted.
It's true, Julia. I mean, we've spoken lots of times, and that on the Rochdale case, one of the girls was made pregnant just when she was 13. I worked on the drama Three Girls that told her story. We had a fetus. We had DNA. That man was not charged with rape.
No, that's statutory rape. It doesn't matter that he claimed she wanted to have sex. She's not able legally to consent to sex. It is a crime automatically.
And you know what, Julia? Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He worked with the Chief Crown Prosecutor on the Rochdale case because that was the first case that we had serious charges. But I would say they weren't serious enough. She was 12 when they began to rape her, and she got pregnant when she was just 13. So they took the easy route and charged that man with sexual activity with a child with trafficking. Those men were meant to be deported. They weren't. Yeah. And what I would say, Julia, I would bring this as well into the ICSA National Abuse Inquiry. It was too wide, too long, 7 years, £100 million. The organised network strand was given 10 days. Yeah. One victim was allowed to speak. I was one of several non-institutional call participants who were denied any opportunity to say a word. They rolled out Chief Constable after senior police officer after senior social worker. The victims did not get a look in.
The victims, the whistleblowers, the very people who were in charge, who allowed the cover-up to go on, were the people who had their say. Maggie, I mean, that tells us an awful lot. I want to talk more about Keir Starmer's role, and I want to talk more about whether an independent inquiry in You or Now would make a difference. I'm going to take a very quick break, and then I want to hear back from you. Lots of people are getting in touch on the phone lines. Give us a call, your reaction to what Maggie Oliver has to say.